Formula One is a very hard sport to be in. Firstly, you have to prove yourself when you are very young, most likely in go-karts. Then, you need to move on to single-seater race cars. There are a whole host of junior formula you can compete in. Most are in major European countries, while some series operate in Asia, for instance Japan. So, a driver must gain sponsorship and recognition in the junior levels before he can ever think about driving in F1. The hard part is that there are plenty of good go-kart guys. Just being good doesn't guarantee you sponsorship. You must take a risk and hope to be in the best place at the best time. Not only that, with the junior levels, you are not really being paid any kind of lackluster results and you'll find your sponsorship drying up. Once you get known, then you may start to attract the attention of a Formula One team and get a test drive. Likely, if you impress, a team will take a chance on you as a test driver to gain more experience or a race seat on a smaller team. Now that you are in the big time, if you do not have a good car, you will not be competitive, so now you have to prove yourself once again and hope to get noticed by a bigger team who has a chance of winning a world championship. So, now saying that you have a good team with a good car, you better hope that you are the #1 driver in the team, so they will put all their weight behind you when it really matters. And guess what? After that, it's still very hard to win a Grand Prix, and when one does, it gets treated as a big deal. Even if a driver wins one Grand Prix, it is considered an amazing achievement. A step up from here is to be a consistent driver who wins Grand Prix and gets on the podium, but does not even win one world championship. Also, a very hard thing to do, but we will get into that later. Firstly, we are going to examine the best of the non-champions. They were either #2 drivers, unlucky, or drove good for a bad team. The first one we'll be looking at is Eddie Irvine. Irvine is an interesting character for his form on the track as well as his activities and comments outside of racing. Irvine is from Northern Ireland, born and raised. When he was younger, his father and uncles owned a race car. His dad was the smallest guy, so he did the racing. His dad also liked a good time going around the pub for a few drinks. Perhaps a little, but not all of that rubbed off on Eddie. As a child, he went every year to the British Grand Prix with his family. Eddie had obviously been bitten by the racing bug and began to pursue it. But Eddie also started young in another love of his, business. All while working on his race career, he was selling cars and car parts, discovering he had a real knack for it. After racing in karts and as a younger man, he'd eventually graduated to single-seaters. Irvine, an extreme pragmatist, said that at the time there was a lot of sponsorship money floating around in Japan.
The world was booming, there was money around, and then the good drivers can find sponsorship, or there's good drives out there. And then after that, the recession hit. And then the next era of good drivers couldn't find free drives, so there was really good drivers around that never made it. I know lots of guys that were as good as me, if not better, and they just wrong timing. I think you have to be good, you have to be persistent, so you're around when you get lucky.
After competing in the junior formulas, including a drive in the famous testing ground of the Macau Grand Prix, he attracted the attention of fellow Northern Irish constructor and team owner Eddie Jordan. Eddie was a wheeler and dealer who, hook or by crook, had got his way into F1. His team was solid, but were not world beaters by any means. However, over the years, many a great driver has raced for him.
EJ came over to me and said, "Listen, we want to get rid of Bootson. Would you be interested in driving?" And I goes, "Of course. Well, I've no money. I had lots of money at the time, but I wasn't going to use my own money." And then he came back to me and we talked about it. In the end, I signed up for the Japanese Grand Prix. Didn't particularly like the car, I have to say. But I remember coming in after the first free practice and I'm like 6th or 7th and everyone's in shock.
Partnered with the highly touted Rubens Barrichello in his first race, Irvine finished 7th, higher than his teammate. Eddie was also known to have drawn the ire of the great Ayrton Senna by the Brazilian, who was then held up by another backmarker. Irvine unlapped himself so that he could try and advance in the race. When all was said and done, Ayrton Senna stormed into the Jordan garage and tried to punch Irvine. He only succeeded in grazing the Ulsterman, who then fell back off his chair.
Nothing justifies hitting him. Nothing justifies, and I'm not justifying myself. I'm telling you guys that what took place was absurd in many different ways, and nobody did anything about it. Nobody even talked about it during the race and after the race.
I'm in there for me and I don't care about anybody else, and that's the way you have to be.
And then after the race, what exactly happened?
Well, that's really boring. It was so well documented. He came down screaming at me and I'm sitting on a chair with my arms folded and I'm happy. I just scored a point in my first Grand Prix. I think it was only 3 guys had done it. So I'm pretty happy. And I'm good at winding people up. And I wind them up very, very well. as I do, and eventually he sprung it, and he swung at me and he hit me in the head. But I was leaning back to get out of the way and I fell off the table, so it wasn't like a knockout punch or anything, but he did hit me.
Regardless, the incident made headlines and Irvine was now a driver to watch. Irvine was later banned for what was considered dangerous driving when he caused a major shunt, further enhancing his crazy reputation. He spent most of his time at Jordan outperforming his highly rated teammate, but never really challenging for the title. However, his good results caught the eye of the mother of all mothers, Ferrari. He was signed to the team in 1996. He was to be partnered with the already world champion Michael Schumacher, who had impressed in his early 20s with the Benetton team. Irvine said that the first time they tested, he outperformed Schumi and was never allowed to test the car again. So he settled into his role as the number 2 driver behind Schumacher for the 96, 97, and 98 season. Irvine has never shied away from saying in his first few seasons at the Ferrari the car was not good. It handled poorly and was off the pace. He did, however, say that it did not matter for Schumacher as he was just that good of a driver. He could force a bad car to do good things and win Grand Prix. This is one of the things that I like about Eddie Irvine. He knows who he is. He knew that he was a good race car driver. He always raced hard, but understood that there were people who were better than him. Perhaps this is also why he focused on business dealings outside of Formula One and used his salary from racing to jumpstart those investments.
My main thing is investing the money I made in motor racing. The one I'm personally involved in mostly is building, houses in Miami. I build beautiful waterfront homes. I put a team together that we've built I've done about 22 houses here in Miami, bought and sold, so it's a good business.
By the 1988 season, the Ferrari had improved, and him and Schumi were regularly in the top 10. Irvine himself earned 8 podiums and only 3 retirements. The following season at Ferrari was, however, his best chance at becoming a world champion. Michael Schumacher broke his leg in the 1999 British Grand Prix. He missed a good chunk of the middle of the season, leaving only Irvine competitive enough to go up against Mika Häkkinen, who was gunning for his 2nd consecutive title. Irvine had already won the maiden Grand Prix of the year in Australia, giving him something to build on. He went on to win 3 more Grand Prix and 5 more podiums. However, Mika Häkkinen was able to pull it off. Schumacher even came back at the end of the season to help Irvine by potentially taking points away from Häkkinen. In the end, however, it did not work. This was Eddie Irvine's best Formula One season, having earned 2nd in the driver's standings. Ferrari, however, with the combination of Eddie and Michael's 2 wins and 2 podiums that year, won the Constructors' Championship. The following season, Eddie Irvine signed a big money deal for Jaguar, powered by the Ford engine. The team had been put together by Jackie Stewart and his son Paul. Eddie and his agent were able to hold out for big bucks. The Irishman ended up earning $10 million a season, money he would later invest in his business dealings. Despite a cool-looking car and big names behind it, his 3 years at the team were a disaster. A few points finishes and 1 podium at Monaco were some of the few high points. Eddie says that there were many management problems and no wind tunnel to test the car. Following the 2002 season, he retired. Aside from business, he is known for having many girlfriends, cruising the world on his yacht, and generally living a pretty glamorous lifestyle.
Lifestyle's a priority. I love money and I want money, but that's only so that I can live the life I want to live.
Irvine has said that when he wants to work, he works. And then, when he wants to relax on his private Bahamian island, he will go there. While many drivers and sportsmen probably end up feeling bored in retirement, Eddie, I'm sure, has never known the word. He continues to jet around the world, spending time in Miami, New York, Ireland, and Monte Carlo, where he still goes every year for the race, which he describes as the best weekend all year. As a final note, I'd like to say, Eddie Irvine feels like a minor inspiration for the scene in Iron Man 2 when Tony Stark races in the Monaco Grand Prix. He has been critical of F1 in the past few years for new additions such as DRS and the Halo system and claims not to pay attention very much. While I still believe he does keep an ear open, he strikes me as someone in life who never looks back and keeps on going forward no matter what. Despite never being a world champion, there is something inspiring about Irvine's approach to life that makes you want to go flat out, achieving and experiencing everything you can in your few short years on this planet.